I'm not really sure how to start this one off, and I've tried sleeping on it for a few nights, but to be honest, Rogue let me down a little bit here on this one, and I've had a hell of a time in this rack on everything from ordering to assembly. And I'm gonna try not to let my emotions get the better of me, so let's just get this thing rolling and give it a fair chance before my natural anger and skepticism take over. This is Rogue's biggest and best rack. Okay, technically there's the RM43. But if you're putting that thing in your home gym, you might have more issues than me, which is really quite an accomplishment because I have two 3x3 racks right here. But I'll tell you the same thing I told Winnie. It's for review purposes. These overbuilt racks are technically made for professional facilities, but that doesn't stop us home gym owners from putting our marriages on the line and getting one. And if you're looking at getting the biggest and best Rogue has to offer, well, this is it. A 3" by 3" bolt together rack with 11 gauge steel and 1" holes in hardware. Which, to be clear, is an oversized American cliche, and it's glorious. The benefits of a 3x3 rack with 1" hardware is that since it's normally the top of the line rack that a company has, they're gonna push the latest and greatest attachments out for a first, with the other lines lagging behind if they ever show up at all. And since it's the best rack they make, you're gonna get all the bells and whistles. So laser cut markings, more finish options, and more holes than any man could ever hope for. So just as many holes in the front as you would get in the side, giving you the most possible attachment points and customization options. So if you want a $300 seat, drop-in Rhino, or chalk bowl, you'll have to stick to the Monster or hope Rogue brings them over to the Monster Lite. But if you want to purchase one of these literal monsters, and I'm pretty sure I just said monster 3 times in 2 sentences, so let's hope somebody else doesn't create a drinking game based on my elementary vocabulary, but they provide unparalleled options and upgrades because honestly, Rogue just makes more attachments than anyone else. And that's a place they tend to really shine. Rogue's attachments for the most part are a step above other manufacturers, but it's also where prices begin to soar, as we'll see later. And while I'm a huge proponent of American manufacturing, and I do think this is an exceptional rack, it's the little things that Rogue is beginning to slip on. And for me, those little things were really starting to add up in this one. But before my natural personality starts to really shine through, let's cover the specs so that our comparisons make sense. We've got 2" hole spacing with laser cut numbered uprights, and those markings continue along the bottom cross members as well. It has an exterior width of 49 inches, which can be problematic, not because Winnie's gonna murder this thing with her walkout, love you Winnie, but since different companies have different exterior widths, Rep and Sorinex for example, having a 47-inch exterior width, it means some specialty bars will fit well and others won't. But there's always going to be a trade-off in these decisions, as shrinking the interior dimensions also gives you less room to work with inside your rack. It comes with 8 weight storage pins and 4 band pegs. At least it's supposed to come with 8. Mine only showed up with 7. And while I know Rogue will make it right and it's not a big deal, it was probably the last straw for me since we spent all day setting this thing up and getting the space ready for this rack, and that was the last thing we put on. It made me incredibly angry to have to deal with one more issue. The pins themselves are gorgeous, really well done and covered in acetyl plastic, which much like UHMW, which is probably what you're more familiar with, does a really good job of protecting your plates and the rack finish from each other, and it's a big upgrade over the powder coat finishes they keep on the Infinity and Monster Light line. The design is really well polished. No bolts to bump your plates against, and it creates a seamless look on the rack. The uprights also have keyhole patterns cut along the outside and inside, which allows for more compatibility for attachments, and it's also how my weight pins and barbell gun rack are locked in. And it's a good example of Rogue attempting to evolve things, but it's a bit of an underutilized feature at the moment. This is a highly customizable rack, and one of the allures of the Monster line is that you have so many options to configure it to your wants and needs. Not only do you have 4 and 6 post configurations at various depths, you've got a foldable version, the flat foot, the collegiate half rack, and the list goes on. But once you narrow it down, you can customize the rack as well. There's 13 finish options, including Cerakote and stainless steel, which I debated for about 3 seconds until I saw the price. But as we'll see in a minute, this is where my issues began. Well, this and with the hardware. which they've got 2 finish options for, zinc and black zinc, which does cost more. Though I guess it looks better to make the bright zinc look like it's saving you money. There's 3 height options at 90, 100, and 108 inches, 5 options for pull-up bar configurations, and 3 different styles of J-cups to choose from, though the standard option has no UHMW on the front lip, so your bar can grind into them some, which is really just ridiculous at this level and price point. Then there's the sandwich J-cups, which is what I have here and recommend getting. These are very well done and worth the $90 extra they cost if you order them with the rack. But I'm not so sure I'd be as happy paying $275 for them afterwards. And then there's the 2-inch sandwich J-cups, but I really don't recommend getting those because since the rack's already wide at 49 inches, you're losing space on the outside and inside of the rack when it comes to grip and racking. It comes with pin and pipe safeties, which are clunky, but give Rogue some credit because Titan and Wrap charge extra to add safeties on. Technically, Titan doesn't even include J-cups or color in their base price, and Rep starts counting from 0, so everything is additional. But the price point between these 3 is pretty far off, though it does seem to be shrinking, and Rogue plays less games in the pricing department, though as we'll see later, the real cost difference between these racks is in the accessories, and that's something you're going to want to pay attention to, and we will cover as we check compatibility between attachments between the racks. You can choose to upgrade to the strap safeties for $130 more, or the flip down safeties for $170 more. And I'd say if you want either of those, then you definitely want to do when you order the rack because otherwise the flip down safeties jump almost 3 times the cost to $490 plus shipping. And the straps almost double to $240 or more. Actually, since Rogue caps shipping when you buy a rack, you'll want to buy as much as possible because shipping stuff this heavy is insanely expensive, but both options for safeties are huge upgrades over the pin and pipe safeties. And I have the strap safeties and I think they're really well made, but if you do get them, I'd get yourself some pins so you can make them removable, which allows you to adjust them quicker. Because adjusting them is slow and a pain since they're so tight in the rack and they're also stuck on the uprights, so without those pins, you can only move them about 3 holes at a time. As much as I'd like to take credit for that one, I can't. I got the idea from Basement Brandon, who's almost always lurking around here. Speaking of customizability, I swapped the front pull-up bar for a gusseted monster beam and threw another one in the back to add a little bit more stability, which allowed me to remove the Rogue Monster nameplate, which was a little bit too much bling for me. I also swapped out the weight pins so that they're all the shorter version since I wanted the extra space and didn't need a ton more weight storage. And Winnie wanted a pull-up bar since our rep rack is a little bit tall for her, so I put the socketed knurl bar in the middle. And if your wife asks for something when you're investing like I am, you don't argue. But why the hell is there no option to change the hardware finish on the pull-up bar? If I get the Monster Light line, the custom version, the hardware matches the rest of the rack. And I did get charged $35 for that black zinc hardware, which, by the way, is the biggest pile of shipping job I've ever seen. Shipped loose in a cardboard box that was falling apart, it arrived so scuffed up, we should call it scratch zinc or boneyard hardware, but actually I've gotten a lot from the boneyard and it's never looked this bad. Or maybe we're just Apple and we're trying to save the environment with this package and definitely not just trying to save money. Okay, I'm fine. Back on track. This is essentially an RM3, which is their 30-inch deep rack, except I've extended and added those 2 uprights off the back, making it a shorter RM6, which is a simple change, but you do have to go through the custom ordering process, which is where the whole thing started falling apart, literally at the beginning. So you essentially email them and they do a good job of getting back to you quickly, but what I purchased with their advice was then out of stock. Originally, I had all of my uprights as a satin clear and everything else matte black. Kind of like on my PR5000, except imagine clear coat uprights instead of red. But after paying and waiting a few days, I got an email saying that those uprights were out of stock. And after waiting months for them to come in stock, well, let's be honest, trying to get information from Rogue on a stock update is probably as frustrating as an experience as it was for Winnie when she had to originally wait for me to propose. Good luck. And rather than reach out to my Instagram followers once again to see what the other finishes actually look like, because the pictures of the finishes on Rogue's website are awful. The only actual pictures of a rack are in satin black, with everything else being renderings, which for such an expensive item is ridiculous. But maybe they're too busy counting their money to update the site. I don't know, but this one could really be on me because I didn't want to wait longer and Rogue wasn't being particularly helpful, so I ordered the gunmetal gray thinking it would be darker. And that was the first thing that set me off with this rack. I suppose I should calm myself down and say some more nice things, because honestly, this is an incredible rack. The finishes are really well applied and the welds are great. And the attention to detail on the rack and high-end touches on the attachments is what you'd expect at this price point. The packaging was awesome, excluding the hardware. And if I didn't get a bit unlucky or whatever, I'd be singing the highest level of praise for this thing. But as a reviewer, I try to be upfront and detailed and ignore the fact that saying anything negative kills the chance for affiliate clicks, which, by the way, and to be completely honest with you, is entirely how this channel survives. So for those of you that use our affiliate links, I truly appreciate you. Now, as I mentioned before, Rogue makes the most attachments for its racks, and those attachments are top of the line. And the Monster line of accessories has UHMW lining the inside of everything, so they don't rub off the finish on your rack. But that quality does come at a cost, so I'll do a few direct comparisons so you can get an idea of what I mean here, and also so I can demonstrate some compatibility between the racks. So let's say you didn't originally order the Rogue Monster J-Cups when you purchased your rack. And now you want to cut your price in half and use reps. The general rule between racks is that anything that requires one pin will fit, though not always perfectly. And that's because Rogue uses 3" by 3" tubing, whereas imported companies like Rep or Titan would use 75mm by 75mm, which is actually 2.95 inches. So Rep or Titan's attachments would fit, but they'll be a little tight. Though you could sand down the UHMW a little bit to make the fit a little bit better, which I've done before with some of my Titan attachments. Now, where I'd really be tempted to do something like this with is with Rep's spotter arms, since they're less than half the price of Rogue's. Now, to be clear, Rogue's attachments are generally better, but both are over the top for what we need in a home gym, and many companies actually plan for that metric versus customary difference, and they'll offer clever workarounds or different versions of their attachments. My 1211 J-Cups, for example, have a shim inserted in the back to close the gap on a Rep rack. Now, when it comes to attachments that utilize 2 holes, that second hole doesn't typically line up well. And of course, any attachment that spans the width of the rack won't work if those interior widths are different between the racks. So Rep and Sorinex at 41 inches versus a Rogue at 43, for example. Now, if the Monster line is too expensive, you could also look at the Rogue Monster Light line, which is also a 3x3 rack, but a few of the big differences being the 5/8 inch holes in hardware, which brings the cost of the accessories down, and it also has west side hole spacing, which I'm a big fan of. Of course, Rep also offers their own version with the PR4000, which you could check out our review on, as that's a great value rack that toes the line between price and quality. If you're interested in an in-depth comparison between the Rep PR5000 and Rogue Monster, let me know in the comments and we'll really compare them. But no, I'm not going to be getting rid of my Rep rack. I mortgaged my house on this one so that I could better compare between inch and metric equipment. And as for the prices, this Rogue rack cost me more with the base options and some customization than my fully loaded Rep rack, which is, of course, imported. Now, with a premium price tag, you also get higher expectations, but I really don't think you can choose wrong here between Rogue and Rep. And I say that after having had so many issues, but Rogue's customer service is still great, and I know they'll make it right. Now, after having some time to cool down and spend some time with the rack and take a little bit of time to appreciate the finer points of it, I gotta say, I really like it. Now, if you've been paying attention, it was light when I started filming and it's dark now, so I've been here long enough. Like, comment, and subscribe to boost us on the algorithm. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.